Would you rather have $1 million now, or would you like to have a penny double every day for 30 days?
I think I'd rather have the penny double for every day for 30 days.
And that's because you know that if you did that at the end of 30 days, you'd have $5.3 million. And one of the things we're doing tonight is we're going to talk with my brother in law, Jason Branning. Welcome to the show.
Pete, thanks so much for having me. Cecil, good to see you.
Yeah, it's good to see you again too.
So, we're talking tonight about compounding interest and how crazy of an idea it is, and how most of us maybe take it for granted, but some of us really don't know how it works. And if we're not taking advantage of it, we're really missing out. And so I can't think of a better person to help talk us through this than Jason, who's a certified financial planner, has his own business, and walks people through investing and saving and managing their money every day. All right. So I wanted to ask Jason to get you started. You know, one of the things that you did, you sat down with my kids, and I know you've sat down with your kids, and you basically explained the whole idea of compounding interest. So why don't you do that? Cecil and I are 12-year-olds.
I love this question.
Explain to us compounding interest as if we're 12-year-olds.
Well, a listener recently told us we were 6-year-olds, so
Well, we'll work on that. We'll dumb it down later.
Tonight we're going to compound your age. You'll double overnight.
that's right.
So you'll be
Double
12.
to 12 years old.
That's right. So the way I'll start this is a true story with my second child, my oldest son, Charlie, who gave me permission to share this story anytime I need to. So I feel completely at ease saying it's him, calling him out. But he came into my office when he was 15, got his first job. And so we were talking about all the things relative to the first job. You know, you're going to have income and it's going to be fantastic. And then you're going to have taxes. And then you're going to have these other things called deductions in your paycheck. And that's not going to be fantastic or feel very good. But we talked also about choosing and electing to pay yourself first by putting aside some of the money that you've made for future Charlie. And so it's the idea that I'm just not going to use it today. I'm just going to use it down the road. And I said, the best thing is you get to take advantage of compound interest. And he said, what's compound interest? And so we talked through this idea of compound interest being money's ability to make money on top of itself. It's a snowball effect. You know, a snowball rolling downhill just gets bigger and bigger with the help of gravity. So I'm talking to Charlie, and I start writing out, if you saved $100 a month, you know, you're 15 now. If you save $100 a month and you just did that until you were, let's say, 24, and you didn't add another penny to your account, you would have saved, you know, I did all the maths there for him, however many thousands of dollars it was. And then you just stop. And then I showed him what the compounding effect by age 60, what it would look like, that account left alone, growing at a rate between 8 and 10%. I showed him different, you know, variables. And he looked at the number and he fell on the floor.
Really?
He fell on the floor and he said, Dad, why have you never told me about this? This is incredible. So I think I had a true saver at that point. Investing at that. Yeah, that made a saver of him.
I wish that would have had that impact on me when I was his age. I kind of came late to this party.
Well, it's okay. Just bring a bigger shovel.
Well, I think a good question then is, why doesn't everyone do this? What is in your experience, what's everyone's holdup?
I think there certainly can be just a lack of awareness that if I start earlier, it makes everything so much easier because of this principle of compound interest. It really is astounding. You know, we think about people like Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett was half as rich. He's about 95 years old. He was half as rich 10 years ago. Contemplate that.
Oh, right.
So I mean, one of the reasons he's
not when he was 45, but when he was 85, he was
that's right,
paying.
exactly. So
Yeah.
so it's sort of odd the way that it works. You know, you go 2, 4, 6, 8, 16, 32, 64, and then it escalates. And so that's the whole, Cecil, you chose wisely by saying I want the penny doubling every day for 30 days versus the $1 million. You would have left about 4 million on the table had you elected the other option, take the money now. But I think people just don't realize how compounding interest works. We think humans are wired to think in a linear format.
Mhm.
Well, you're talking about compound interest, that is parabolic, it's exponential. And so we are not very good in our human cognition in thinking about exponential.
So let me repeat back to you. So it's for compounding interest is so you have an account, it's tied to the stock market, more than likely, or to get that kind of return. So you're earning money, but then you earn money on the money you earned. Is that a good explanation for it?
That's a great explanation.
Yeah.
You got it.
Yeah. So it's growing, but then you're adding as it gets bigger, then you're making more money on the interest
Exactly.
as the principal grows.
Well, let me give you an example.
So if we think about an exponential curve, about when does that start happening? When does the
23
money start
20 to
earning
20
more than the person putting in?
Yeah, 20 to 25 years, somewhere in that time frame typically. And that's also the difficulty of the whole project is this first delayed gratification, but secondly, it takes so long. You feel like you're going nowhere for decades. And
Yeah,
then
right.
suddenly, oh my goodness, there's this massive swoosh sound that happens that,
Yeah.
oh, it does work. I mean, compound interest does work. Albert Einstein called it the eighth wonder of the world. And there's a reason.
Really?
He did.
Wow. Yeah. So, well, Peter, you're saying wonder why people come so late to this.
Yeah.
I think there's a lack of awareness in some cases, and others it's just the fact of not automating their life. You know, when it comes to money, the best thing we can do is automate our life. In other words, tell my money where I want it to go before I get to the place where it gets spent. Because if it lands in an account that's called spending, it gets spent, all of it. So you just have to sort of pre-think and allocate what you want to pay your future self. Always pay your future self first and set it aside away from your spending account.
Yeah, I have recent graduates, and I have told them, I said, if you'll just listen to me and start putting away money, your 50-year-old self will go back and thank me, 30 years from now.
Yes.
Yeah.
Keep telling them, encourage them.
Yeah.
And then every time you get a raise, if you just set aside, you should always, spend part of the raise, but you should also increase your savings rate along the way too, so that you don't continue just a ratchet lifestyle to the degree that, it's all consumption rather than saving or investing.
Yeah, I started working in a drugstore when I was 14 years old, and I was like, man, if I had started like really seriously saving when I was 14 years old, what would that have looked like? And I saved, but I didn't save I didn't understand compounding interest at that point in my life either. So,
well, one of the things about compound interest is, interest is compounding in a savings account. It's just low.
right.
Versus if you put it into instruments like, let's just say, the economic growth engine of the world, like the stock market index. Let's just use that. And we're not talking, past performance is not indicative of future results. We're not, guaranteeing anything here. But we're talking about principially, there's 100 years of market data, and that market data says if you own the basket, historically, in some years are really good, some years are really bad, but over time, the economic engine, at least in the US, has been able to produce roughly 10% growth rate over time. And so 10%, but then you take off inflation, so a real return of roughly 7%. But you can do this thing called the rule of 72. Are y'all familiar with the rule of 72 in compounding terms? Okay. So there's this rule that was a shorthand. It was like a mental math shortcut. And there was an Italian a mathematician. He was actually a friar, and he came up with this. It's basically, it estimates how long it takes a certain amount of money to grow at a stated rate of interest. So, for example, if you take 10 divided by 72, what do we get? 7.2?
7.2. Yep.
That's right. 7.2 years, every 7.2 years, your money will double if it's growing at 10%. So
I have heard this now that you say it like that. Now that you're
yeah,
explaining it, I have heard that.
this gets to the idea that you do have some levers that you can pull to pursue a higher interest and a faster compounding cycle. But you can't put your foot all the way to the floor of the gas, because you might be tempted to do really risky things and try to get a 20% return, right? And so where there's those kinds of opportunities, there's also the opportunity to go way down. And so it's just measured out. But you do want to try to accelerate some of your growth, and in terms of letting it grow faster, or what's been available historically.
I think I know the answer to this question, but if with compounding interest being so powerful, why aren't all retirees rich? Why don't they all have a lot of money?
Well, many do, in terms of if they started early, or they do. I think there is another. We talked about this idea of getting roughly 10% a year on a basket of stocks, right?
Yeah.
But it doesn't happen that way every year. Let's think about one of the great NBA basketball players. Their stats. I just heard this, like LeBron James, his stats are like, I need to go back and get these for you, Pete. But it's like 27, 7, and 7. So he's like averages 27 points, gets 7 rebounds, 7 assists, or whatever. But not once in his career did he actually ever get to the average. He was always around the average. It's just what all the numbers, the variations, the plus and the minus, that's what it came to. And so I think markets do some really good years and some really crummy years, and sometimes people blow themselves up and interrupt the compounding cycles when they have that downside effect and they get scared. And so now we're talking about the domain of human behavior and not the math, because if you rest on the math and the principles of the math and what it's been able to do for 100 years, over time, if you wait, you're generally okay. So people tend to disrupt their own ability to let that compounding continue. And so I think Charlie Munger, who is Warren Buffett's partner, he always says, rule number 1, never disrupt compounding interest.
What do you mean by disrupting? You mean pulling the money out of the market?
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, because I guess even if it drops, then you're still able, you have less money, but you're also able to buy low.
That's
Is
right.
that the thought? Yeah.
That's exactly right. Yeah. And what's interesting is a little counterintuitive. When market prices tend to go lower, the expected return, if let's say you're low for 2 years in the market, well, the expected returns as you look forward, just to get back to the average, has to be pretty attractive. And so unfortunately, some of the best days in the market are just after some of the worst days in the market. And so the idea that you can get only the best days without the bad days to get the average, it doesn't work. So that's another part of compounding, is don't interrupt that ability for your money to compound by having a knee-jerk reaction.
Let's run some numbers, Jason, because we were just talking about interrupting compounding interest. And we were just talking about people being afraid. Stock market drops, they pull out, they stay out, probably longer than they should. Let's assume, give us an example of what would happen if you had $100,000 and something happened at the stock market, and you got afraid, you pulled out, you waited for some time, you got back in. What did that happen to your imbalance?
Okay. All right. So there are a number of assumptions we have to at least state. And one is, let's say, and pretend for a minute that we're talking about a 20-year horizon, and we're going to invest in the S&P 500 that has averaged about 10% per year. So if we look at pulling the money out just at year 5, and then we return money at year 10. Okay. So
Okay.
that's kind of some of the parameters. So if you would have stayed invested just during that whole period, that $100,000 by the end of the 20 years would have grown to about $672,000. So, but if you pulled money out and you sat in savings in your savings account 5 years in for a period of 5 years, you would have had $461,000 at the end of the 20 years. So about a $211,000 difference after
So
20 years.
you lost a
So
third of your what could have been
exactly.
by only pulling out for what 25% of the time. You lost a third of your money.
That's right.
I
Exactly.
think
Now,
that's like that seemed logical to me for a long time. Like if your market's low, pull everything out and have it in the savings. But that actually, you're actually hurting yourself when you do that. Is what you're saying.
yeah, because there is unfortunately a hidden side to average. The hidden side is you have to live with a downside
Right.
Mhm.
in order to get the average. We
Yeah.
all just
Oh,
want to
yeah.
be able to get the upside,
Right.
but you can't get the upside without the downside. And usually the best up years come right after a crummy year.
Right.
So, Jason, are you saying that I can't time the market?
I appreciate the softball
Actually,
question.
that's
I mean, we don't believe
serious.
you.
That's a pretty serious topic. Talk to us a little about timing the market.
Yeah, the old adage, especially when it comes to compounding and being invested in the market, is it's time in the market, not timing the market. Now,
Ah,
if we were prescient, we would certainly love to be able to time the market and only get the good days or only get the good years. But no one is that good all the time. And so the question is, how can I position myself so that I can take advantage of the power of compounding in a reasonable way? And that's really the whole principle of putting your money in and leaving it in something very diversified and low cost, is so that you can just let compounding do what it does on your behalf. And so it's the opposite of a casino. For years, Mary Kelly, my wife, she would say, why are we putting all this money in the black hole? That's what she called the stock market. It was just a large sucking sound, out in space. And it was collecting all of our dollars. Well, it feels like it's going in the black hole sometimes because there's not something tangible to it. Not, it's just a number on a piece of paper. But really what it represents is this collection of businesses that make goods and services that are offered to consumers and to businesses and governments. And over time, this collection of businesses, they've got a lot of smart people working in them. And they're going to figure out a way to make a profit, or they're going to go out of business or get bought out. And that's a very healthy part of the process, frankly. But by spreading it out and owning enough of them, there is a way to kind of smooth out that bumpiness. You can eliminate the potholes. What you hope to do is just not crash the car.
Good way to put it.
so one final question, and then we're going to turn this over for Cecil to do the speed round. We have probably a dozen or so people that are in their 20s that listen to our show, and then the rest of them, the other dozen, are older. But the question is, what you got that, huh?
I just
So,
got what you're saying.
so if you could go back and to your 25-year-old self, Jason, what would be the one piece of financial advice you'd give?
Well, I would definitely say automate your life and pay yourself first.
Okay.
From within your paycheck structure, and that way it just is happening on purpose every month. And if you can, there's this great study that's out. It's called the Safe Savings Rate Study. There's a lot about safe withdrawal strategies for retirees, but this is about saving and how much should, based on your age, based on your allocation to stocks or bonds, looking at this compounding interest question, how much should I be saving along the way between me and maybe an employer contribution? What makes sense to make sure that I'm going to be covered when I get to that point, and hopefully have enough in the kitty to pull from for my lifetime. But safe savings rates, studies indicate that if young people can save between 15, let's call it 12 to 20% of their pay along the way. So part of that contribution may be coming from the employer and the other part from their own pocket every month. If that combination invested in a diversified, long-term kind of approach, left alone, you'll have enough to be able to retire when the time comes. And so I would say automate your life. That's really maybe that's the easiest way to say it.
All right.
Some of these other caveats.
I wish I'd known you when I was 14. So,
I would have liked to see you with hair, Cecil.
Yeah, it's funny. There's people that know me from years ago when I had hair, and then there's people that know me in Winston-Salem. And those two groups rarely meet. So we do a speed round, which we'll do here in just a second. But you do have a podcast that you were starting. You want to give that a plug?
Oh, hey, thanks. Yeah, it's going to be called 10 Minutes Wealthier. It's in our company. It's called Branning Wealth Management. We're just an independent fiduciary advisor, and we're located in Mississippi, but we have an office in Chapel Hill. And so we serve clients across the country. About 40% of our clients we've actually never met face-to-face in person, but on some kind of streaming or video like this is the way we've met them.
So it's going to be called 10 Minutes Richer.
Wealthier.
10 Minutes Wealthier, and it's Spotify. It'll be on all the major platforms.
We hope.
Good.
That's the plan.
Well, if we can get on all the major platforms, surely y'all can get on all the major platforms.
Right.
I feel confident.
Yeah.
All right. The speed round is just have a few questions, starting off with, if you could be a pharmacist or an engineer, which one would you be?
Engineer.
We're still at 100% on that. All right. Do you listen to TDSR?
Absolutely. Every week. After church on Sundays, I take my walk usually.
Yeah.
And so it comes in sometimes on Saturday, but it comes for me on Sunday afternoon. And so it's my Sunday afternoon walk.
Yeah. Thanks for listening. Do you think TDSR is cool?
100%.
If you had to listen to one band forever, who would that be?
Oh, that one's really tough. I rarely get tired of Mumford & Sons.
Oh, we have not had them before, so that's good.
No,
that's
good.
All right, if you could live anywhere for 1 year, where would that be?
The Cotswolds.
Cotswolds. Where's that?
It's in England.
Is that
in the countryside of yeah.
Why there?
Because I think the pastoral views. It's a walkable. It's they say cities sized for people.
Really?
You're not super tall buildings, and nothing wrong with that. I like some of that. And then lots of green rolling hills.
Sounds nice.
Your research on this one, man.
Hey, I'm there.
All right. Last one is, what is your dream car and/or truck?
All right, the Toyota Land Cruiser.
Nice.
Very good choice.
Would love.
Saw a vintage one. I saw an old one of those today when I was out.
So cool.
Yeah.
It's not cool. The Scout, Pete, but it's
all right, man. Not everyone has
Scout-ish, Scout-like.
Not everyone's perfect. Okay, that's fine.
Right.
All right. Well, it doesn't sound right, but I think you've come to this episode on compounding interest.
Well, hey, if this is your first time listening or watching, we want to welcome you. If you liked it, go ahead and hit that subscribe or like button. Feel free to leave a comment also. If you're that longtime viewer or listener, we'd love to hear from you. Maybe you could share some of your experiences with compounding interest. TDSRpodcast@gmail.com.
All right, that don't sound right. It's a production of TSR Podcast in conjunction with Camel City Studios. Peter and I do all of your hosting and technical work. Camille does some of our barista work when she's here. Giorgio tests our merchandise. Brent is our international brand ambassador. And as always, listener number one is Scott. So until next week, keep talking.
And stay curious.